Hi, welcome to JamPlay.com. I'm Michael Hawkeye Herman, and we're learning and playing the blues. I appreciate your traveling with me on the blues highway here at JamPlay. I've been talking about blues guitar licks up the neck in the key of A. And the reason why I picked the key of A is because it's right in the center of the neck, and it's really gives us access to everything up here. And in this lesson, I want to talk about those blues guitar licks that are down here in the lower aspect of the neck. You know, in rock and roll, they have a tendency to go way, way up on the neck, you know, up here. And you got your cutaway, and don't forget this blues scale on a cutaway guitar. This blues scale that we're playing can be repeated up here at the that's the 15th, 17th fret. There's another A, and so if you've got a cutaway electric guitar, you can play that scale with your tonic note right here on the 17th fret and get all these notes up here. Of course, on the acoustic guitar, we can't do that. Even if I had a cutaway acoustic guitar, I still could get a couple of notes, but not many. So what we want to look at in this lesson is down here in the bass. So the reason why I mentioned in rock and roll, there's a tendency in rock and roll for people that's called wanking. That's a technical term, wanking. And when I refer to wanking, what I'm talking about is that electric guitar players in rock and roll have a tendency to work their solo up the neck until they get way up here, and then they start wanking, and they play those notes repeatedly. A lot of notes repeatedly. In blues music, we don't do that so much. We do go way up the neck and we do play those notes, but we try not to wank so much. When you start wanking and playing a lot of repetitive notes, or that kind of stuff, you're getting away from blues music. That's more rock oriented. So blues music is more selective in terms of the notes, and what we want to do is be more selective. Now, don't get me wrong before I move on. I grew up with rock and roll. So I love rock and roll, but when I play rock and roll on the guitar, I know to approach it differently than when I play blues. Blues music is more laid back, a little bit more laid back, and not as tense, and not necessarily as many notes as you might find in rock and roll. Now, when I say not as tense, blues music can be very tense, but that tenseness can come from just bending one string and holding on to it, like B.B. King, maybe going. So that tenseness is not dependent on, the intensity is not dependent on playing a lot of notes. It's dependent on being selective with your notes. So let's go down into the bass of the blues scale in the key of A. We've got notes that are back here behind the tonic. So my tonic note is on the 5th fret of the 6th string. And I'm going to play that with my third finger. I'm going to play it with my third finger, and the reason why is because I'm going to need my index and second finger to play back behind that note and also to move to the next string. So here's the basic box I'm going to play. I'll let you watch it first. Okay, that was at the 5th fret of the 1st string with my third finger. Then the 3rd fret of the Again, I will say, I think I said that wrong. I think what I meant to say was that is at the 5th fret of the 6th string with my third finger. And I can slide up into that. Now in blues music, that can be a lick in itself. I like it. Especially if it's been put in conjunction with something else that's maybe up in another octave. So slide up to that 5th fret on the 6th string with your third finger. Now take your index finger and put it on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. And now your second finger goes to the 5th fret of the 5th string. And now your third finger goes to the 7th fret of the 5th string. And now we got this box. Now, in the previous lesson, you saw me add a passing note in 2 places, and you can do that in this everywhere as long as you're doing it in the same spot. In other words, between the 4 and the 5 note, you can play the flat 5, and between the flat 3 and the 4 note, you can play the passing note that's in between those 2 notes, like this. In other words, here's the 1. on the 5th fret of the 6th string with my 3rd finger. Here's the flat 3 on the 3rd fret of the 5th string with my index finger. And here is the 4 note with my 2nd finger at the 5th fret of the 5th string. And there's a passing note in between. This note in between, you don't want to hang there. You don't want to hang on that note, but you can use it as a passing note like this. So now we've got a lick there. Now after you play that note, can you slide with your 3rd finger? When I say after you play that note, I'm talking about the note I'm playing with my 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string. Now slide that up to the 7th fret of the 5th string. You can actually slide up there after playing the 5th note on the 5th string, the 5th fret. Or you can punctuate it like that. So here's a good lick. And here, playing it in reverse, that was ascending, playing it descending like this. And of course, I said to slide up with your 3rd finger to the 7th fret of the 5th string. Now, what about that note that's in between at the 6th fret? Yes, that's a passing note. That's the flat 5 in the scale. I can use that like this. And here I go. I'm going to shift with my index finger. So I'm playing with my index finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string, and then I'm playing with my 2nd finger on the 6th fret, and then I'm going to play with my 3rd finger on the 7th fret. Like this. Oh, see, now I jumped over from my tonic note on the 5th fret with my 3rd finger, and now I can maybe I'll do it like this. I'm jumping with my index finger from the 5th fret of the 5th string to the 5th fret of the 6th string. That's a good example of a buzz there. You see how I push that string off the side of the neck? You got to be careful of that. All right, so now I've got these passing notes in between. One time, a little repeat. Did you see how I shifted my index finger up to the 5th fret on the 5th string so that I could get that passing note in between? I didn't have to. I could have resorted to doing what I did before and dump out that passing note and not use it at all. But that's part of what I wanted to show you, is that those passing notes are very usable. Now, can you carry it on up the neck? All right, that's a lot of notes. We don't need them all. Here's some good licks. I'm going to go up to the 5th fret with my index finger on the 5th string and start to explore that a little bit. So it's a good idea. This is the trick. When you got your 3rd finger at the 7th fret of the 5th string, and then you play with your 2nd finger at the 6th fret, and then your index finger hits the 5th fret of the 5th string. Now you might want to, and I think it's a good idea, slide back down with your index finger to the 3rd fret of the 5th string. Or you could hit the 4th fret too, so that you're in position to hit that tonic note on the 6th string at the 5th fret like that. Otherwise you'll be out of position. So you got to play, you won't get hurt. I don't think you'll strain your fingers or anything, but you will find sometimes when you're trying to play some licks that your fingers are out of position to reach what you want to reach. And the reason why is because you need to consider ahead of time where your index finger needs to be. And so if you need to slide it down like this, I was up here. And now I'm going to slide down with my index finger from the 5th fret on the 5th string to the 3rd fret. Or 3-4. Excuse me, or 5-4-3. That's 5th fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret. Like that, but all with the index finger. So that you're in position to hit the tonic note on the 5th fret of the 6th string, like that. And now we're in position to go further, deeper down, as low as we can go. My 3rd finger is on the 5th fret of the 6th string. Now my 2nd finger is going to go down to the 3rd fret of the 6th string. And now I have an open E note on the 6th string. So I've got now I can start to add that either way, from open up to the 3rd fret to the 5th fret on the 6th string, like this. Or from the 5th fret to the 3rd fret to the open string. All on the 6th string. Yeah, how about bending that 3rd fret 6th string note? Now let's try and run that up to the tonic note, the next tonic note. You got a tonic note, an A at the 5th fret of the 6th string, and you got a tonic note at the 7th fret of the 4th string. So let's see if we can run that up there. Now let's see if we can call into play the other notes that I showed you in this lesson. Those passing notes. You don't need a lot of those to play a lot of notes. So yeah, I say this over and over again, but that's what makes it blues. What makes it blues is to think what you're playing and not watch yourself play. If you think what you're playing, you'll have a tendency to play less notes, I believe, because it's harder to think fast notes. As a matter of fact, sometimes when I hear certain players play, like Johnny Winter or Joe Bonamassa, I hear more notes than they're playing more notes than I can actually hear. And I'm a guitar player, and I cock my ear and I listen to what they're doing, but boy, they play at such blinding speed that's what makes it rock and roll more rockish than blues. So they're blues rock players, or the way I put it is rock blues players. And there are a lot of great licks just in the bass. Don't be afraid to go in the bass. Now, I'm going to tell you a little quick story. I played with a guy in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, for many years. He was a mentor of mine, an African-American blues musician who was very famous in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's in the Bay Area Blues Hall of Fame, and his name is Haskell Cool Papa Sadler, and he passed away in 1994, and I traveled and toured and played with him all over the country, and particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area for many years. And he had previously been a bass player before he started to play the guitar. He played electric guitar, and I played electric guitar in his band too. But one of the things that I noticed that always caught the audience off guard and caught everyone off guard, and that he was able to do, is because he had been a bass player previously, he frequently played his solos in the bass, especially when another guitar player was on stage with him and ended their solo thinking that they were going to cut his head. That's a head cutting is in blues music and in rock music too, is when guitarists have a tendency to be competitive on stage, and they try to cut each other's head by playing faster licks or more tasty stuff than the other person. And after they finish, they usually end up way up here wanking on the high strings, and then they stop their solo, and their solo is over, and they look at the next player who's going to play, and as if to say, okay, what can you do after all that I've done? Well, Haskell Cool Papa Sadler, having been a bass player, knew how to take great bass solos in the bass strings of the guitar. So sometimes we'd have a guest sit in who might be a hot rock and roll player, and he'd take a solo, and he'd end up with solo just really wailing way up here on the electric guitar and the high strings. And then he'd finish his solo with maybe a and then step back, and he'd look at Cool Papa as if to say, what are you going to do now? And we'd have a big audience in the club, and what Cool Papa would do was something like this. He'd play in the bass. He'd dive totally in the other direction because the audience and the band that's on stage has already heard everyone's heard this other guy play way up here and really wail. So Cool Papa knew that if he dove in the other direction on the neck, it would get people's attention. It would make them listen because they've just heard a whole lot of high notes. And all he had to do was, rather than play even loud, was play softly in the bass notes. And it was so understated and wonderful that the audience almost got whiplash by looking at him because what he was doing was so different than the other player who just thought that they had cut Cool Papa's head. So the other guy had finished his solo way up here, and Cool Papa comes in to play his solo and would go like this. I learned a lot from that man, and one of the things that I learned the most is how to exercise taste and to pay attention to what other people are playing when you play with other people, so that not only can you lift and steal things from them, but also so that when it's your turn to play, you don't repeat what they did and you don't start where they left off. That's not a good place to start. If they ended up on the high strings playing really high notes, that doesn't mean that you should start there. What you should do is find another place on the guitar to play, because that's what's going to pique the audience's interest. Ooh, that's different. Rock me, babe,